Okay, we're back at it.
Hey,
Uh,
Drew.
hey,
Good
Steve, good to see you.
to see you too.
I had an old friend from medical school said he and his wife were listening to the podcast, and I thought that was very made my day.
Oh, that's really cool.
So I don't know
That's
how they
really
found
cool.
it, but that was kind of exciting. Um, and I think kicking off, this is Steve, this is Drew, and this is Inspire, and it's tagline of life and leadership conversations that go deeper. And I think that that's where we're headed today. We're in the eye of Inspire, and we're talking about identity. And last time we talked about false identities, and we talked again about the structure that I've talked about, that three circle, if you
Yeah.
can imagine. I thought today I was swimming in the pool. I thought about Saturn, right? The rings of Saturn. Like
Oh, cool.
maybe that's another way of looking at it, is that we are Saturn and we are the planet Saturn, but we people can't get to us because they can't get past our rings.
Yeah.
And the two rings that we've been talking about, predominantly, we've been talking about the large outer ring of false identities or false selves. And then next time, we're going to start to talk about the smaller circle identities of unwanted selves, or what they call in internal family systems, they call exiles. So we'll talk about that as well. And then we'll get into the actual planet itself, the inner circle of what's our true identity, what's our true self look like.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Love I love the analogy. I mean, planet
Yeah.
Saturn's such a big planet, but yet you can't get to this superpower that you got in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
And yeah. Yeah. So, a little bit of recap. I'm going to start with a quote from a client that really struck me. You do nothing without saying it first.
Oh, I love that.
And I thought, at first it stumped me. I'm like, wait, what? I mean, I just went for a swim and I didn't say it first. And he goes, it doesn't have to be audible.
Right.
Everything you do, every action you make, think about that today. Every action you make in your head, there is something being said.
Yeah. It starts with that thought at minimum that's verbal in your ear. You know, it's verbal, right?
Inside
Yeah,
here, there's
inside.
a
Yep.
voice that I hear that says, I got time to go swim.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. My task list. I need to get this, and this done today, right? And you go through that mentally as you're writing out your task list for the day. I need to get this done, that done, this done. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then some of us that are probably more on the weird side of things, say it out loud too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I would you call that weird? I think it's great.
My wife catches me. Brooke says, "Wait, what? Did you just say?" Yeah, sorry, talking to myself again.
I
Um,
get the are you mumbling again?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that too, right?
Yeah.
So the theme for today is again a deeper look to the false identities. I hope that people who are listening are taking in the idea of starting to fill out that Saturn ring, that
Yeah.
outer circle.
Yeah.
Starting to fill it out, like we talked about the judge,
Right.
which is the inner critic that we all carry with us. We talked about. Um, you're going to have to help me with the rabbit, the velvet rabbit. The
Velvet
idea
rabbit.
of like um, the uh, the idea of trying to be lovable and trying to befriend
Yeah.
and embrace. And I think the phantom analyst and something about the controller, right? So we talked about
Yeah.
some of those primitive. We talked about the bunny rabbit way too much. Primitive ideas: fight, flight, or tend and befriend, and those are in that outer circle as well. They also are in also we'll get to in the other circle as well, the unwanted selves or identities. Um,
I love that term primitive. I mean, that's really where it comes from, right? Our primitive brain, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I love
and
that.
and I think yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I think you brought it up earlier when we were chatting, the idea that these voices that we're hearing, these identities, specifically the false ones and the unwanted ones, are unskilled
Yeah.
because they showed up when we were kids
Yeah.
and they spoke with us like kind of unskilled, like, hey,
Yeah.
dummy,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah.
And we don't need them anymore. And they push us along instead of pulling us along.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. They cause the tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They cause
And
the
I,
tension
I
and stress.
guess I love that you said they cause attention because there was a quote in Positive Intelligence by Shazad Shamin that said, all anxiety, stress, frustration, anxiety, all that stuff comes from our unwanted or our false identities. And I
Yeah.
thought, no way, that's crazy. And here we are, like, I don't know, I read that book 15 plus years ago. Here we are, and I'm like, I'm a believer. That's actually
Yeah.
true. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do too. I can't, every time I try to map it in my mind, I can't come up with anything different than it's some type of a saboteur in there or a false identity in there that's creating that stress.
Yeah.
And then once you identify it, you can start to work on getting the freedom from it, right?
Yeah.
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 Well said.
Yeah.
Um, so we invited you guys to reflect last time on, did you name some of these characters? Did you notice them? And I use the word nourish. And Steve, you brought up a good point about what nourishing may look like.
Yeah, I one of the things in IFS, and I spent a lot of time listening to IFS the last month, and they talk about how you can embrace these characters that you've got. They're there for a reason. They're there to protect you, and really kind of celebrating the fact that they are there to protect you, and then to be more curious. We're going to get into that, but even be more curious about why they're there. But they're really there to protect you. So, bringing out your judge against them is not the right approach. But
Mm.
being curious about them, bringing your sage or your true self out to go to them, is really the cool thing of how you nourish them.
Yeah, and I think that's such a beautiful example. I was taught way back when in a coach training class that was like, when you hear these voices in your head, just say, hey, buddy, I hear you and I appreciate you. And
Yeah,
why don't you go play in the sandbox with all the other kids or
yeah,
all the other, saboteurs?
yeah,
So just that light touch, because I
yeah,
think some of us, and I've had clients do this where they come with the idea of, I named my judge, you know,
yeah,
killer or spike, or I mean, I don't know, instead of like some come up with just a little lighter touch. And I think that's important is let's just call them unskilled, helpful when when we were little,
yeah,
but now let's just say, thanks, buddy, but I got this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for getting me to adulthood, but I'm an adult now, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You kept me away from the oven.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, and then the other part of nourish that I thought of was just the idea, and maybe we didn't touch on this deeply enough, but mindfulness, the way to get our brains less sticky. And I use this term, and I think most people get that, right? The
Right,
sticky brain, they're like ruminating, can't get this thought out of my head, can't get this voice out of my head. I think the studies have shown that the way to train your brain and develop that brain chemistry so that you still get these voices, but they're just not as intrusive and they don't stay very long or as long as they used to.
right,
And those mindfulness moments are six. Each of the senses are five, and then breathing. And
yeah,
so throughout the day, and I had a partner that just set his watch to chime every hour. And so at least every hour, he would take 30 seconds, a minute, some short period of time just to check in with his toes and his shoes. That's touch.
yeah,
The sound of the air conditioners, sound. He might be, maybe it's lunchtime and he's eating. And how often are we really savoring and tasting all the different
exactly. Yeah,
things in the bite? I
yeah,
just walked from the pool back to my home office, and there's a rose a little rose garden that I
Cool.
stop and I savor. I really pause and intentionally smell the rose that's in full bloom.
That's
Never
great.
used to do that, but that is what they call a mindfulness moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Staying in
That
the present. Yeah.
doesn't take
Having
long.
some almonds yesterday, and you could crack them so they'd fall in half, and sensing that almond would actually crack in half, and then which half of the almond do you go after next? And but spending a little bit of time and really being deep in thought about that cracking that almond, and the next one.
Well, right, and just there's the physical, the
Yeah.
touch,
Yeah.
the sound,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
taste.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think there's so many clients that I get that they'll say, "Oh, I'm doing that already," and then they say, I drink a cup of coffee in the morning. I'm like, I really want to be intentional about the idea that over 50% of the time, all these research nerds have established that our brain is an autopilot. 50% of the time or more, our brain is in la la land. It's doing things automatically. And this is the act of nourishing our brain by saying switching to manual. I don't know what pilots do, but they switch out autopilot.
Yeah.
They're in manual, and
Yeah.
they're actually, this is the opportunity intentionally throughout your day to hold on to the steering wheel or to the, yeah.
Yep.
And I am actually, so it's not just I'm having a cup of coffee, but are you actually really fully feeling the warmth of the
Yeah.
coffee cup,
Yeah.
smelling the coffee,
Yeah.
tasting it? Now that's a mindfulness moment. But most of the time we're doing these things and we're not really pausing to absorb it. And
Yeah.
that's the key part to nourish our brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Love it. Yeah.
I don't, did we, where is the idea, like I said, all the senses, right? But
Yeah.
where's breathing for you when you do your mindfulness?
For me, it's breathing for me when most of my mindfulness is honestly a lot of toe tapping. I mean, I was doing that while we're
Mm.
because most people can't see it. If you don't have hard shoes on, it's easy to do, or wiggling your feet. So there's a lot of that for me. I find mindfulness honestly shows up more in my sports. When I'm gonna go play golf and I'm gonna go hit the ball, I'll before part of my pre-shot routine is to just kind of flush everything and take a couple of three, four deep breaths and really get a feel for what the feeling of the earth, the feeling of everything. But it starts with those deep breaths for me. And I'll do the same thing, if I'm going out on a bike ride or um, sometimes, well, I love it when I'm fly fishing. I'll
Mm.
just take those deep breaths. That's it, but it usually for me revolves around some type of a physical activity. But I love having those moments. Yeah.
And I think I just, it very clearly is, I am now about to hit the ball. I'm going to consciously
Yeah.
take some deep breaths and really slow down.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that movie Bagger Vance,
Oh yeah.
with that one scene where he says, the caddy, which was Will Smith, I think, says, no,
Yeah.
no, no, just hold on, see the field. And
Yeah.
there's that one moment where everything stops and all you see is the grass and the ball and the, oh,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get a chance.
Perfect.
I think you and I've talked about that. It's a beautiful illustration of mindfulness.
That's perfect. That's
Yeah.
a great description. Great description.
Um, so by now we're hoping that everybody's starting to unpack their inner critic. They're naming it, they're noticing it, and they're nourishing it and themselves with mindfulness moments. Anything else we need to talk about in that space? Oh, you said
Yeah.
IFS, which is internal family
Yeah.
systems, just so that everybody who's
Okay.
listening knows what that is. And if they want to nerd out at the end in the show notes, I'm going to put some books around all of this stuff we're talking about.
Cool. Yeah. That was one
Yeah.
I nerded out on. But one of the techniques that you and I used, and I went back and looked it up, but when we did the first naming, you said, let's do it like Harry Potter. And
Mm.
there's that Bogart scene where you have, and people who don't know the movie, there's a scene where there's a shapeshifter, and the shapeshifter is kind of your worst nightmare, right? And that kind of can be your judge as your worst nightmare. And they teach the kids in the school how to have a spell that they cast on these bogarts that's funny. They use comedy to do it to make, to make and identify, for us making and identifying our judge, this big scary thing. We used a comedy technique. So mine, we talked about it last time, but I named mine Flip Wilson because Flip Wilson always made me laugh, and he had a thing called "Here Comes the Judge." But using that comedy technique is really helpful, and we'll get into distancing, but it gives you a chance to step back from the judge a little bit and play with the judge instead of having him control you. You can step back and understand the judge, right? Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
good reminder. I mean, I named mine the jerk from Steve Martin. We're naming
Hmm.
our people so most people listening don't even know who those people are. But um,
We're dating ourselves with our
yeah,
movies.
yeah. Um, the other thing that popped in my mind is beyond the inner critic. Today, I want to talk about when I first did coach training, they introduced this idea of saboteurs to me. And they said, oh, when you coach somebody, you will notice a saboteur has shown up when it feels like the conversation is like O'Hare Airport, you're in a plane, and the pilot says, we're going to have to go around again because the weather's still bad. The idea that we've all been in those conversations when it's just
Yeah.
like you feel like, is there someone else in the room and we're just going in circles here, you
Yeah.
know? And I thought it was a great illustration. And I'm reminded of that. But the follow up was just start calling it out. And it was so hard for clients and myself to just call out, oh, Steve, I noticed there's a saboteur in the room. What is that?
Right. Right.
Because we are not good at self awareness. So oftentimes the client would go, I have no idea. And I would go, well, let's name it, and it wasn't as clear as when Positive Intelligence came out and Shazad Shamin, who I love his work, kind of said, hey, I've made up some names and archetypes
Right.
of these other characters. So it turns out there's not just one inner critic, the judge, the main
Right.
one, the inner critic that says, I suck, you suck, everything sucks. There's
Yeah.
also a lot of other kind of thought patterns that have been developed in our minds.
Yeah.
And some of these, I'm reading them from the Positive Intelligence book, the idea of these archetypes, which made it so much easier for my clients. And in fact, the author of Positive Intelligence even has this free saboteur accomplice saboteurs
Yeah.
assessment, which gives you this little bar graph and explains them all. It's really great.
Yeah.
But for today's purposes, I thought you and I could share what our main accomplice saboteurs are, but also just first introduce all of them.
Okay.
And I I'm going to stop. Is that clear what I just said?
It's clear to me. Because you have been through it before. But yeah, there the nine different saboteurs that Sharad has identified. I mean, they all kind of fall into that category. Even when I've done IFS and found a few more things in there, they all still fall a little bit into each one of those categories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you'll find, and I think you and I talked about this, Myers-Briggs and DISC and all these
Yeah.
other identity, personality, behavioral assessments do have these characters somewhere linked to some of these. There's some
Right.
themes.
Right.
And even fight, flight, or befriend,
Right.
those primitive responses to stress, oftentimes those are linked to some of these caricatures, some of these archetypes of these false identities. So
Right.
now, today, the homework by the end of this time is going to be add to that outer false identity circle, not just your Flip Wilson and the jerk, Steve Martin,
Hmm.
but start to add what else is in there? What are
Right.
these other false identity voice patterns that you're starting to recognize? And so we here they so I have see if I can get them here. Avoider,
Hmm.
um hyper achiever,
Hyperachiever. Yep.
hyper rational,
Yep.
hyper vigilant,
Yep.
pleaser,
Yep. Pretty good.
stickler.
Yep.
Okay, now I'm cheating. There's two more. Oh no, there's more. Oh, so I missed a few. Okay, restless, victim, and controller.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Those are the nine archetypes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think he did do, I don't know where I don't know where he got them from. And they're not probably his originals, right? They're probably
Right.
like historically from all this other psychological stuff, but they do land. I think all of us would admit that we have, well, first off, we have all of these.
Right.
So technically we have 10, at least 10 thought patterns, voices in our head that are circulating. But we have two that are probably 90+% of the time the ones that take us out. And
Right.
that's the critic, the inner voice, the inner critic, the judge, and name your top accomplice saboteur.
Right. Right.
Um, and for me, it is hyper rational, which I've told you before and we've
Yeah.
shared. And I think also, let me jump in and just say hyper is when it's overdone. Like being rational is a
Mm.
good thing,
Yeah.
logic, analytics,
Yep.
methodical. All of that is probably part of Drew's superpowers is
Yeah.
the idea of being rational. But hyper rational is when it's become overdone, toxic, and unhealthy.
Right. Right.
Not all of these have a hyper in front of them, but they all are like that. So,
Exactly. It's
and
it's an
you,
all it's an overdone piece of you.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so another
What
way to
did what did
nourish
you
it is to
yeah.
recognize what's the nourishing part of this saboteur in my life.
Yeah.
And it got me through med school. It,
Yeah.
gave me a lot of blessings, but where has it gone off the rails and how do I need to notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you name it? Just out of curiosity.
Well, it's funny you say that. I originally named it Spock,
I like that.
which is great, right?
Yeah.
But now I've kind of morphed it. I've softened it a little bit to the professor,
Oh wow. Okay.
just because I've been.
I kind of
So
like
it's kind of evolved into more like the professor.
I like that. And I like that you've evolved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It I have a picture that I found of the professor all dressed in like tweed and,
Right.
smoking a pipe and, sitting in his little chair. It's like, it's just, very too autocratic, too staunch,
Right.
too inflexible, but not like, yeah. So anyway, I,
I
your turn.
mine yeah, mine are the avoider. And you and I talked about this. I picked the three monkeys of hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil, kind of as that avoider thing. Um, and I don't know. I've also thought about evolving the name of that one to Schultz. I know nothing. Um,
From what was that? That's
Hogan's Heroes, I think.
Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah,
Yeah, another
yeah,
old
yep.
classic.
Yeah, but that avoider there was there to help me a little bit, is to help me from the fact that I'm dyslexic. I make mistakes probably more than most people do on a daily basis, and it hurts, when you make a mistake. Nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to make mistakes. So that avoider put things off for me, so that I wasn't going to get hurt. So it was there for a purpose. It was there for a reason. Um, and I have to keep going back to it and reminding it, hey, I'm now a 63-year-old guy. I thank you for getting me through it, but um, we can move on. I'm an adult, and you've got me to this point, and I'm in great shape. So we need to repurpose you or do something more with you than what you're trying to protect is my 6 or 7-year-old self, right?
Yeah.
That's one.
So
Go
I
ahead.
wanted to lean in with a question.
Sure.
So of course, hyper rational and rational, that's an easy, what's the superpowers embedded in avoider?
I think the superpower, I think what it gives you is a false sense of security,
Mm,
I'm going to say. But it's a sense of security that it gives you, that you're okay, that everything's okay. You're going to be okay.
mm,
Um, I think that's what it gives you. It gives me a feeling of safety, even though, you know, 2 hours before the deadline, I'm in panic, but it gave me at least a window of feeling okay, feeling all right.
And I'm going to say, and I don't just call me out if this is the theme I see with people who have a loud avoider saboteur are that they're pretty carefree. There's a
Oh,
sense of like, hey, do you want to go? Hey, yeah, I'm available. Hey, like kind of a carefreeness to them. So
yeah.
I'm wondering if that's part of the superpower and the goodness. But when it gets overdone, it becomes procrastination and in their head stress because they've blown everything off.
Yeah, I used it differently, but I see that, that Kramer kind of thing attitude of, hey, let's go out and play golf. Hey, let's go out and do this. Let's go out
Yeah,
and do that. There's a lot of that. I kind of filled that with, instead of being carefree, I kind of filled it with busy work. I
yeah,
didn't work on the important things. I filled it with the stuff that I knew I could do, I knew I could get done, I knew was going to work out. I filled it with the stuff I was confident with and not necessarily leaned into the more difficult tasks, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Was the
And
way
I
I
cut
approached
I
it.
cut you off. Were you going to share your another
Yeah,
one?
the other one is, my second one is a pleaser. And I named that one the Yes Man, from the Jim Carrey movie. So I tried to pick something funny, and he was supposed to say yes for a year, and I feel like
And
I've
something
said
from
yes.
from the '90s. I think we're finally starting to kind of pick our
It's trying to
movies a little
move, yeah,
closer to
move
home. Yeah.
past the boomers. But it for me it was a lifetime of pleasing, and I put myself in that position of trying to make everybody happy, not making myself happy but making everybody else happy, and I know that hurt my team when I was leading a team because I was accepting way too much work into the group and not
Mhm.
saying, no, look, here are high priorities. Here are the things we need to work on. Here's honestly, folks, what we can't get done.
Mm.
And really setting that out there as a buffer for them and to be able to help them. Um, Now you're going to ask me what's the superpower of of being a yes man. Um, you got a lot done. You did a lot of great things. You still picked great, good things to say yes to, right? And you got a tremendous amount done, and you got praise for getting those things done, right? Um, but again, it just caused stress in the life and stress in my team,
Yeah.
um, where we would have been more effective had we had focused on the right work at the right time, right? Instead of
And I think you also shared the revelation that's very important is the idea of fight, flight, or tend and befriend, and the
yep,
unwanted identity embedded in tend and befriend is I am terrified of not being lovable or
yeah,
liked.
yep,
And so the pleaser is somewhere embedded in that childhood experiences that we had. And it wants to come out and say, make me, let me show you I can help you
yep,
or
yep,
there's a difference. So all the pleasers, all the people that have a pleaser saboteur that's loud tend to be very servant oriented, very
yeah,
love focused,
yep,
you know, and I say sometimes it's the difference between unconditional love and conditional love, because a pleaser, somebody with a loud pleaser will, if they're able to manage it, have a large capacity for unconditional love. But pleaser, that
yeah,
saboteur is really a conditional
yeah, yeah,
voice, right? It's
yeah,
saying, love me, so yes to everything because I want to be lovable.
yep, yep, yep.
Yeah.
I think of it, for me, it was, and the superpower is it made me a great team player. People liked having me on the team because I was gonna fill in the gaps, right? If there were things that needed to get done that nobody was gonna do, I could fill in the gaps, and that made me loved by the team, if you will, or accepted by the team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that this is a great example of the false identity will try to convince us that it's important and great and there's no other way.
yep,
But the reality is there is a better way. That those are lies that
yep,
it's been feeding us for so long that we are so convinced.
yeah,
But in reality, you were saying yes, or your saboteur was saying yes without you
right,
on all this stuff that exhausted you and
yep,
put a lot of tension on
yep,
you and et cetera, et cetera.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It was, I'm not making excuses, but it was also part of our corporate culture.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
everywhere, right? I mean,
yeah,
it is,
yeah, yeah,
um, and I think going along with that, the idea of like the fight
yeah,
primitive response oftentimes is connected to the controller and the stickler.
yeah,
The flight often is connected to hyper rational and avoider.
yeah,
And the tend and befriend, the velvet rabbit, tends to be pleaser, victim, etc. So that's I think six of the nine are
yeah,
embedded in that. And we could find a place for all the other three as well. Now that being said, I've done this work long enough to know, yeah, typically you can see somebody's mindscape with a pleaser avoider 1-2 punch,
right,
but not always. So
right.
I have clients that are, hyper achiever and pleaser, and
Yeah,
all the different mix.
yeah,
You will see some of these kind of running together,
yeah.
or coming together, but not always. Um, I Yeah,
I want to go back. I love the way you laid that one out. And we talked about this at the beginning, but that controller stickler, everybody, you've said before, and I love this, and I use it with a lot of people of the biggest fears. Everybody has, there are three fears, right? And everybody has one that's big. I'm going to fail. I'm not enough, and I'm not loved. And the way you laid out, it's like that fight, the controller and the stickler is, I'm gonna fail. That's the judge that's going on in the back of their mind. And the flight, the hyper rational and the avoider is I'm not enough. That's what the judge is repeating in the back of your mind. And then the tend and befriend is the pleaser and the victim is I'm not loved. I mean, I
mm,
love the way that all kind of comes together. And
yeah,
that's one of the ways that, people who are listening can kind of try to figure out if they're not, and they should. It would be great if they went back through that whole thing by Sherrod and took the test to see where they are. But one of those voices is louder in your head than the other
yeah.
two. Yeah,
And I think I guess before we move on, the other thing that prompted me to say is, where do these come from? And everybody wants to know. It's like, don't worry about it. Who knows? Like, I
yeah,
mean, you know, I have a childhood experience that was, traumatic, but not, mildly, that had an effect on me because of my genes or brain or something.
yeah,
And if we put Steve in that exact same event, different saboteurs might have stepped in. So
exactly.
it's not that, it just is like
Yep,
it's a combination of the environment and our upbringing and our genetics that create these animals. But I think thematically, there probably are indeed, seems like there are nine plus the
yep,
judge inner critic voice.
yep.
And we just have a combination of them that show up louder than others. So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Um, I was just going to touch base. There's another framework that I really liked, other than Crazy Drew's three circles.
Yeah,
The other framework that I learned in coach training is the idea of like a mansion.
yeah,
Imagine that your mind is a beautiful mansion, and you walk into the entryway, and there's a big, huge, beautiful dining room table, and there are seats for everybody. There are seats for your unwanted identities. There's seats for your, you know, false identities, and then there's seats for your true self identity, et cetera. And we'll talk about that
Right.
later. But it's a beautiful, another way to look at this is you can probably find online like a picture of a mansion that you love and then start filling out the rooms. Like
Yeah.
just imagine your brain is filled with a bunch of rooms, and in those rooms are decorated, you know, Spock
Yeah.
and all these different characters. Some of them are unskilled, and we can just say, "Hey, buddy, good to see you." And others are skilled, and we'll get to those as well.
That's cool. I
Yeah,
love that. That comes back to also the nourishment idea of nourishing those unwanted selves and the
yeah,
saboteurs. I love that idea. That's a
yeah,
great concept. Yeah.
yeah. So we were going to kind of conclude today talking about some tools that you and I were nerding out about. They are from Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion. We're going to touch base on that because that's a really important piece. And then Ethan Cross, who I don't know where he got all of this stuff, but there's some cool things from his book Chatter. And then he wrote a new book I just finished reading. I'm
Hmm.
blanking on the name of it, but anyway, it'll come to me. I'll put it in the show notes. Okay, so he talks about third person self talk, which was funny. It's funny if and when Trevor hears this, but one of my buddies from my water polo team in high school, I always told my kids this, that Trevor would talk in the third person, and he would say, "Oh, Trev will take care of that," or "Trev needs to do this." And I thought it was so funny at the time, and I just thought it was hilarious. But he was onto something.
That's- Was it, did he wasn't inspired by that Seinfeld episode, was he? Where George is getting angry, George is doing this, George. I mean,
No,
that's
but
the same
I love
idea.
that you brought that up because
Yeah.
that was, I went to that was after,
Okay.
so he wasn't inspired by it, but he was pretty ingenious with the use of that
Yeah.
because especially in a stressful, highly competitive water polo situation or any sport,
Yeah.
if you just remove yourself a little bit, that idea of the third person, they've done research on this, that if you just say, "Hey, Drew, you've got this, you're better off, you're going to be healthier." So that is one, I think part of our conversation is what's the tool chest? And
Yeah.
that's one of them. What are your thoughts on that one?
I was just all of a sudden it struck me about my wife, and we were playing golf together. And Nikki's a tennis player, but she we would go out and we played golf together, and she made some great shots and made a putt. And she's for Nikki when she does that, she just goes into a celebration. Go Nikki, it's your birthday. She just goes into a big celebration of her in the third person, and it's really awesome. And it's like, wow, that is a fantastic thing. And I never drew it back to that until you started talking about this. I was like, it's such a cool thing that she does. Yeah.
And it is super cool, and it's
Yeah.
really been, I guess there's research to back that that's a good approach to us is
Yeah.
you got this,
Yeah.
and that's really helpful. The
Yeah.
other one is he calls it the fly on the wall technique, which is more to me is more of that out of body experience we've
Yeah.
had when we're
Yeah.
in a meeting
Yeah.
and we recognize live time that one of these false identities has shown up,
Yeah.
and it's such a cool feeling because you kind of feel like a fly on the wall observing
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
behaviors, but they're not really yours. They're your hyper rationals behaviors.
Right.
And so it's a cool, I love the fly in the wall idea.
Where you zoom out and are able to see yourself. I think um I did. There's a historian, Shelby Foote, and he talks about Lincoln, and he talks about Lincoln having this ability that you're talking about is to actually step back, see himself, see himself react in these situations, and then change the way he's going to react in the
Ooh.
situation for the betterment of the discussion, the betterment of the outcome. And it's such a powerful tool. I've tried to do it, and it's really hard when you're triggered to just you know, pull yourself out and have an outer body experience. But man, what a powerful tool. What a
Yeah, and he says it says creating psychological distance from the trigger.
yeah, yeah,
But I think it applies to all things in life, right? We're
yeah,
just better when we take that out of that fly in the wall perspective on anything.
exactly.
Yeah,
And it's a lot of what we're talking about, though, is somehow distancing ourselves from these saboteurs, right? And being able to sit back and be, I'm going to use one of the words from, introspective is the word,
mm,
to be introspective about what we're doing,
yeah,
either time distancing or physically, mentally distancing, and then actually having some introspection about what's going on.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then the third one that he talks about is the Batman effect, which is shifting our identity by asking, "Hey, what would courageous Drew do here?"
right.
And it's funny that that one prompts me to tell the story. A lot of people our age have kids in their 20s, and
Yeah,
it's the like, oh my gosh, they're driving me crazy. I don't know how to parent them, blah, blah, blah. And there was a study, I can't remember where it's from, where they took two, I think I've told this one before, where they took two groups of kids, both of them not doing well in a class in college. And one group, they said, hey, we're going to get you everything you need. And the other group, they just asked them one question. Hey, if you were giving advice to your best friend Steve, and he was in this situation, what wisdom and advice would you give him? And those kids, by answering that question in that format, did better than the kids that got all the resources.
got everything they wanted. Wow.
And so it's that idea that the Batman effect, like,
Yeah,
hey, what would Batman say or do? What would, and it's so funny that this stuff works. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. But I love that it gives you that introspection again, right? You kind of step back and go, okay, what would Batman do? What would someone else do? It gives you the chance to zoom out, right?
Is this my sales pitch for why hire a coach? Oh, I
Yeah,
missed it.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, but just that outside perspective, and you can
yeah,
get it with
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
That's the crazy
yeah,
thing, and it
yeah,
actually works when you
yeah,
get it with yourself.
yeah,
If we just pause to do that, um, and then you already mentioned, I think it's called the other one was time distancing.
yeah.
Tell me about that one.
Well, time distancing is like, when you're in this situation and you think about right now, it's you're triggered, so it's a crisis, right? You're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. But if you can back up and go, okay, where am I going to be 10 seconds from now? Where am I going to be 10 minutes from now? Where am I going to be 10 months from now? Where am I going to be 10 years from now? How critical is this really? And what's the right thing? I'm going to go back to the Batman thing, and what's the right thing to do in this situation? But it gives you, again, time distance from the problem or the trigger that you've got in front of you. Yeah.
And is this like my father, very wise father-in-law, who said, when I was going through this crazy time, really stressful, he said, in 5 or 10 years or even less time, you're going to look back and this is all going to be mice nuts. And I thought, did he just talk about the testicles of a mouse? And it's like, that's what he's saying, that in
Yeah,
the big picture, most of the stuff that we worry about, if you just took 10 seconds or 10 minutes
yeah,
or, whatever, 10 days, it's
yeah,
going to be probably not a big deal.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Time distancing.
yeah.
And then the Kristen Neff has a self-compassion assessment free online on her website, which is
Okay.
really interesting. And she talks about these three self-compassion tools. And we'll talk about these again when we talk about our true self, our true identity. But just to lay them out there, one of them is mindfulness. Notice your false identities and with curiosity, with nourishment of
Yeah,
them, and do these mindful moments.
yeah,
Start to
yeah,
discipline yourself every day to get your reps in, so to speak, your
yeah,
mindfulness reps.
yeah,
Common humanity.
yeah,
We all have these false identities. They're all part of who we are. and it's okay. You all got them. We're in this
Yep.
together. And then self-kindness. And it's the practice and train to speak gently to ourselves, which is what we're talking about in talking in the third person, fly on the wall, Batman
Yeah.
effect. You know, we, these voices, these unskilled kiddos in our mindscape have been beating the crap out of us.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, how often would we talk to our loved ones like they talk to us?
Right.
I hope not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. 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 Like there was the listeners have picked up that I'm a golfer, but there was and golfers are notorious for beating themselves up, right?
Mm,
And I think it was Bob Rotella who said, talk to yourself like you talk to your 5-year-old self. Be that kind to yourself. Not like you're an adult, but talk to yourself like, or you would to your 5-year-old daughter. Talk to yourself in a very positive coaching way. So important to not beat yourself up.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I often say to my kids, you got this.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you
yeah.
got this.
Right.
Yeah. Um, and yes, what
I have
else? Yeah.
I'm going to jump in on because I didn't from my notes, but the back to the mindfulness thing. The thing that struck me there was, the Ted Lasso quote that gets quoted now, and it was from Walt Whitman, but it was "Be curious, not judgmental," which I love and have hanging up. And then the common humanity. You were great at this when we were going through our coaching of I'd come to you with a situation and you would ask me, so what do you think their triggers are going on right now?
Mm.
What do you think is going on with their trigger? And during COVID, we talked about it that everybody's walking around with their amygdalas triggered of, not safe, not safe, not safe. So just compassionately understanding where people are and that I don't know what percentage you think, but it's a high percentage of people walking around triggered.
Oh, I mean, that's the thing. It's so we get so caught up in our own egos and our own little world, and we are so unself-aware, and we're not very other aware either.
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
lot of what we're talking about is emotional intelligence and
Yeah.
the muscle that we can build to get better at it. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, like, whoa, 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 what's everybody else doing? Like, why did that guy, get in front of me in the traffic? And if I'm not careful, it ends up being a lot of bad things. But if I'm careful and mindful, I can say he's probably triggered and he's probably got
Yeah.
all these voices, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
good illustration of that.
Yeah. That's
Um,
fantastic.
okay, homework is the
I love
idea
homework.
of
You know that.
the idea of journaling, and not just typing, but actually writing physically is really helpful.
Yeah.
Someone told me, I think it was a client recently said, I can't remember where it is, but if you write in your journal with a pen and paper, or you could do it digitally, but if you're actually writing, the act of writing, you can't think of anything else other than what you're writing,
Yeah.
which is a great,
Yeah.
that's the importance of it. So get your pen out there and start to write. What name these guys? By now I hope that circle, that false identity circle, that outer circle of Saturn is being filled with funny names for your inner critic, the judge, and some of these saboteurs. Make up names for them, create your own, start to recognize. So name them, notice them. When are they showing up? They're going to show up. Some of certain ones will show up with certain people,
Right.
and certain ones will show up in certain circumstances, which is really even interesting. And others won't show up at all, or they will, but out of the blue from a circumstance you haven't been in before. So be mindful of that as well. And then nourish them. Say thank you for your service. But you can go play in the sandbox with these other guys. I got this.
Right.
And nourish yourself, nourish your brain chemistry by starting intentionally to get these mindfulness repetitions embedded in your calendar, embedded in your life. I
Yeah.
mean, I have a sticky on my bathroom mirror. When I get up, it says feet, teeth, and coffee. And
I
it's to
love it.
remember, wake up, put your feet on the ground and do PQ rep or do a mindfulness repetition on feeling the carpet under your toes.
Right.
Go to the mirror, brush your teeth, feel the bristles touch every tooth. Go to coffee, and you can get all kinds of mindfulness with coffee, right? The warmth of the cup, the taste, the smell. Do these throughout the day. Find those moments, embed them to habits that you do all the time, and you will be blessed. It will really change your brain chemistry. Anything else?
No, there's a mic drop on that one. A great finish. I mean, you hit it all perfectly. Yeah.
And I think the other homework, if you want to take on extra homework, is reach out to Steve or myself, and we can send you what Shahzad's created, this kind of wanted poster idea,
Yeah.
which is the funny idea of like, FBI's most wanted, like put a mugshot up of, Flip Wilson or the judge, whatever your judge is, and then start to think about what's the name, what's a catchphrase that you hear, and you gave a lot of them today were great. When they show up, why are they showing up? What's the fear that's driving them? The unwanted identity that's driving them, which we'll get to next episode. And then, I guess in addition, who are they protecting? They're protecting some unwanted voice in our head, and that's what they're there for. So, yeah.
Cool. Love it.
Okay.
Okay.
Always a joy.
It was a blast.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Yep. See you later, Drew.